Who or what are you holding a grudge against? How does that impact how you see them or the situation? And what might change if you committed to letting go of the grudge and re-perceiving the situation? We'll be talking about that and more on today's episode of Our Waking Dream. I'm your host, Coco Swanson. Each week on this show, I go over a basic astrology theme. I do it in a way that's practical, in a way you can integrate into your life. Every week I do that here. I also have notes from the field on my YouTube channel. I just started that a couple months ago. And I have a leadership studio on my webpage. It's where we're exploring somatics, astrology, meditation, energy healing, and systemic change in how we're leading our body, mind, and our heart. That's over on my site. So links below. Okay, let's get started. Let's talk about Mercury in retrograde, which is happening. We're in the middle of it right now. So we've got Mercury retrograde conjunct the sun today on July 12th. Well, what does that mean and how does that impact you? I'd love to unpack Mercury and what it means for me when it's retrograde and how I use it to enhance my experience in life and in relationships. So Mercury is about our mind, our perception, the meaning we make about different situations that we're in. It's about how we communicate. So if something's in retrograde, we review, we reset, we reconsider, we reassess. That's what it's about for me. It gets clunky because in that reassessment, things don't work as smoothly as they have before. So usually if we hear Mercury retrograde, we know that communication, maybe tech or how we're talking to each other and listening, might be a little janky, might be slow and confusing. I'm looking at today how we can utilize that to help create change in our relationships. Oh, as an aside, I'm in Mexico and there's background noise. And so if you hear it, I'm outside. So thanks for bearing with me. Okay, this said, let's talk about Cancer, because Mercury and the Sun are in Cancer. Cancer is a zodiac sign that in its glory, in its positive strengths, it's nurturing, it's about emotional safety, intuition, that closeness that happens when we are intuitive in our emotional landscape, emotional fluency. It's about home, family, it's about the womb and belonging. So what happens when Mercury is not in its strengths? Because every single thing has both a shadow and its illuminated pattern. And so Cancer's shadow is more about resentment, defensiveness, emotional reactivity. It's when we hold grudges. So have any of you experienced emotional defensiveness, grudges, resentment? I have. That would be a sign of Cancer and its detriment. If Mercury's in retrograde, we have a gorgeous opportunity to explore what resentment you're carrying now, what baggage emotionally you're carrying about that person, that group of people, that country. I mean, it can be any at the micro or the macro level, and how that's impacting your life. And what you can do to release the emotional baggage so you're seeing the person and situation through eyes of kindness and through eyes of love. Inquiry questions that I bring into this Mercury retrograde. It's who have you frozen into an old version of themselves? Who are you defining by their worst characteristics still? That seems to happen in conflict. All is wonderful, and then something falls apart. And the behavior exemplified through falling apart is what we start to remember versus all the rest. Can you start to release grudges while still maintaining emotional safety and boundaries? It's important because we don't want to just let go of grudges and fall back into abusive or non-congruent relationships. And what might change with your family, your workplace, your community, our countries, if we started to let go of emotional baggage and committed to see each other through fresh eyes of compassion and kindness. Again, this isn't to say to not have boundaries. In fact, that's the first practice I'll suggest. It's about what we do in that space when we have emotional regularity, when we can regulate our emotions and choose to see people with fresh eyes. So we are constantly participating in the world through our perception. How we perceive someone or a situation is impacting it. We are the governors of our perception. So we can choose to re-perceive if we want to. And while Mercury is retrograde, it's a lot easier because that's supported cosmologically. Let's talk about practice number 1 is always the inquiry questions. And so the inquiry of who's frozen in an old version, can you start to release your grudges without releasing your boundaries? That is the first practice that I suggest, because we have to take the pulse on how we're doing in order to indicate what practices we need. Because say you're somebody listening who actually doesn't tend to hold grudges. Well, you might not need to release grudges. But say you're somebody who really is boundaryless. Well, you'll need this next practice about how to create safe space to keep loving. Right? So really take the pulse in how you're doing in this during this next time, the Mercury retrograde phase. It's this little window. When anything's retrograde, we have this window that's supported energetically in the examination of what it illuminates. Okay, so practice number 2, sacred space between us. What if boundaries aren't a punishment, aren't this rigid, like absolutely no? Instead, it's a space I need to recalibrate my own emotions and the space I need to keep loving, the space I need to clear my perception and to know more about what I need when I'm not emotionally triggered. Boundaries, the space I need to keep loving. Depending on a situation, I might need a little space, maybe a day, or maybe I'll need a lot to recalibrate from a hard emotional situation, to let go of that initial fire, and to see myself and the other person through a more clear and loving vantage point. Boundaries for me are just that. If something goes awry and I'm emotionally triggered, I create space. In this space with boundaries, it's really important what you do with the space. Are you continuing to rehearse the he said, she said, the injury of what happened and playing it out? So this, just to be really clear, I'm not talking about abusive situations and returning to abuse. If you're in an abusive situation, that indicates a different response. Yes, to keep loving somebody but from like a real distance, where you have a closure and emotional safety that might be indefinite. However, in that space, do you want to keep rehearsing what a jerk that person was, even if they really were? What does it do when we continue to rehearse how terrible somebody is or all the things they did wrong to us? That keeps our focus on being a victim. It keeps our focus on negativity, and it has the potential to repeat the cycle of whatever we're in. Another thing we tend to do is enlist others to support our perception of them being a bad guy and us being the good guy. Are you enlisting others to support your narrative of a situation? If so, that's superhuman. However, during this Mercury retrograde in Cancer, it's a perfect time to create space to return back to love. So if you had an argument with someone at work, or if something went awry in your family or in your core relationships, to take space and purposefully choose to see yourself and the other more humanely, where we have room for mistakes. All of us are making mistakes every day. Yay, we're human. Sometimes we're at our best, sometimes at our worst. But oftentimes, after conflict, we freeze somebody in their worst. During this Mercury retrograde in Cancer, we have a gorgeous opportunity to bring the resentments we've been carrying to the surface. To choose to say, I am open to forgive, I am releasing this. To take as much space, the sacred space, between us. What makes something sacred? To me, that's allowing myself to see through the eyes of love and compassion. We all act very different, and it's all different types that make a community. But when we're in conflict, it's so easy to demonize each other and then to stay in that demonization, rather than just to say, everybody makes mistakes. Let me see this through fresh eyes, and let me see them through fresh eyes. And how does that impact us over time when we're all doing that together? And again, this is not to say if you're in an abusive relationship, the boundaries will be larger. And I hope that the clarity that comes through considering your own emotional safety and need to regulate leads you in a direction away from any abuse. This is more about in day-to-day conflict, in workplace conflict, in family conflict, how we hold grudges and how we perceive somebody that's influenced by how they are at their worst, and how when we take space, boundaries, we can allow ourselves to return to love on purpose versus rehearsing all of the injuries and all of what they did wrong. Does that make sense? Because if we allow ourselves to see them, the jerk over there, whoever they are, humanely through eyes of compassion, then solution is a lot more likely to take place. And also, if I'm carrying a grudge, I mean, it's named in the I am carrying. Who's carrying it, right? It's the weight that I'm carrying. And then I start to perceive the whole world through that. I become angrier in general. So the space we take to allow things to fall off of us, to return to love, and to choose to see each other differently. That's practice number 2. Practice number 3 I suggest for this week is to release outdated, sticky emotions through resting on the ground. It's grounding. What if, before trying to change someone else's emotions, I took responsibility for my own and chose to release all the heavy emotions and be replenished by joy, by peace, by love? What if? What would happen if you did that? What happens if before you respond, you choose to clear your emotional space by leaning in rather heavily, meaning lying on the earth, leaning into the planet, grounding? How? It's quite simple. What I suggest is a grounding exercise. Like every somatic exercise I talk about here, it starts with awareness. So you bring awareness, have a little flag, like a little note to yourself that says, oh, I'm feeling gross. I'm feeling resentful. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling, and then fill in the blank, and it's something that doesn't feel good. That's your sign. That's your sign that you want to clear your emotions, because your emotions are impacting how you're thinking about the situation and the person. So then you just go lie down on the ground. Ideally on the earth itself, like on grass or in your garden. A bed can work, especially if it's winter. You can put your snowsuit on and your rain gear on and go lay on the earth. Laying on the actual ground, I believe, is the strongest way of doing this. Then you ride your emotions. What emotions am I feeling? You let them come up on purpose. And then you exhale the emotions without thinking about the story, the narrative, the he said, she said, the they said. What are we talking about? Who knows? Right now, I am letting go of emotions. Right? Does that make sense? So you get out of your brain into your emotional body. Once you lie down on the ground, breath by breath, I let go. You notice the emotions you're feeling and imagine, sense, and feel the emotional energy, which, from my perspective, emotions are just energy in motion if we let them move, which we want to. And how about we let them move down to the earth? We say, I let go. And then we imagine, sense, and feel our emotional energy draining into the earth and the earth just gobbling it up. Our next breath will be replenishment. We choose, and we choose through a statement of I am. Even if you're not feeling peace, after you exhale resentment, anger, frustration, I invite you to choose an attribute that you'd like to experience instead. And you claim it with I am. I am peace. Or we are peace. What if you bring it to the whole situation and you allow it, you and whoever you're in conflict with, whoever you're holding resentment against, you allow the two of you or the group of you to be bathing in peace through intention. Intention goes a long ways. So you bring the emotion that you're carrying to the earth. You exhale it, and then you reclaim what you want instead. So anytime that you're feeling resentment, frustration, anger about somebody, about a group of people, about anyone, you can bring it to the ground. You can bring it to the earth. You can lie down. Lie down and be aware of the emotions more than your thoughts. That's just a shift of focus. And then you say, I let go, and feel the emotions drain from your body. What does that feel like? The mere act of laying on the earth and intending that will enact it. If you're new, it might feel subtle. Nonetheless, after a few breaths of that, it's I am, and you choose whatever you want instead. And what if you say, I am peace, and you choose to focus on the feeling of peace moving throughout your system? You could put your hands on your head and have the feeling of peace moving throughout your head. Because as we start to release our own emotional baggage, our resentment, our anger, our frustration, we're able to see situations and people through more humane lens. Our lens is impacting our world day to day, moment to moment. If you're carrying baggage and resentment, that baggage and resentment is moving into your relationships. It's impacting everything. So why not commit to seeing with fresh eyes? Why not commit to allowing yourself to see through the lens of love? To not freezing someone in what they did wrong, but instead to release and to allow yourself to see through fresh lens. It's a perfect time to do that with Mercury in retrograde in Cancer. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for being patient with the background noise. As always, reach out to me. I'm available, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for being a part of our community here at Our Waking Dream. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Fill my cup and let it overflow. Let it overflow with love.